Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of Igniting Change, United Way Unfiltered. Today we have Shantay Bloxham. She is our CEO at United Way of Southeastern Idaho. Thanks for coming, Shantay.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
We're so blessed to have you as our leader. I have to say that it is an honor and a privilege to serve under you. You are an amazing mix of strategic and just you take care of us and you provide a work-life balance that is, I think unmatched. And
We're
we
5 seconds
appreciate you.
in and you're making me be all red and
You're welcome.
thanks.
Yeah. So
You all make
it's,
it easy. You make it easy to show up every day and in the best way that I can.
well, we are grateful for you. And honestly, I think the entire community is grateful to have you in the nonprofit sector because you've been in the nonprofit world for a while now.
I've been in it for a hot minute now.
Yeah. So you came over from SECA.
SECA, yes.
So how long were you there and how long have you been with us at United Way?
Well, I was at SECA about 15 years. So literally grew up there, from a young 20 something into, I'm not going to disclose how old I am today. You can figure that out on your own. But I've been at the United Way now. We're coming up on a year and a half. We're knocking at the door at a year and a half. And every day I wake up and I'm so thankful to be in this space. I can't believe it's been a year and a half. And, we've said this before, like this just feels like the way it's always been. Like it doesn't it feels new in certain ways, like new of learning new things, but like new in the environment doesn't feel new. It feels like it's just where we've all been together all the time.
Love that. What is it like? I'm just going to put you on the spot because
Yeah,
I can. What is it like leading our team?
Oh, it is like the perfect culmination of all of the things. Some of the words that come to mind, I think I'm still trying to figure out because it still feels surreal, to be in this space where it just feels so natural. You've heard me tell this story before, and this will segue me into how I feel about working with this team of like coming into an all-female team of like, not just an all-female team, but a powerhouse female team. I said, this is going one of two ways. It's either going to be really bad and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to make it work, or it's going to be great and we're just going to keep moving onwards and upwards. And, it was the latter of those two things, which I felt deep in my soul. It's been a whole soul experience moving into this space. And through that, I've learned to trust my intuition and trust what my inner self is telling me and follow those gut instincts that we feel, which led me to where we are today. And working with the United Way team is truly a rewarding and inspiring experience. It's a lot like being a part of a dynamic family. That's really, I think that one word sums it up of we are a family. We show up for each other. We support each other like a family does. Who is committed to making positive impact in the world. And for me, it's a sense of purpose. It encompasses diversity and inclusion, collaboration, innovation, impact, development, passion, positivity, just to name a few things. Those are all the things that come to my mind when I think about what I feel in my soul about being a part of this team. I believe that being a part of this team is an opportunity to be a part of a dedicated community of change makers. We all bring so much to the table, but we also recognize that we don't all bring all the things. And so, being able to lean into each other of that's not my wheelhouse. Can I lean on your expertise, Ginny? And I think not all teams can do that with, at the level that we do in the comfort, because it's never about feeling threatened in your role. It's about this person's here and that's the right person. And that's who I'm going to lean on so that we can keep, growing and moving forward and doing the best that we can for our community. That's why we're here every day in this work, in this nonprofit world, is to make our world a better place to live in.
I agree with every single sentiment. And I would just cap up by saying that our team, I think, has a special dynamic for sure. But one thing that really strikes me as different is the level of support, both personally and professionally. But, if one of us has an event or if one of us has something that we need to do or go to, you are always the first one to load the boxes, the first one there to help with literally anything that we need. And we're so appreciative of you specifically, but also like that we all do that for each other.
We do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, it's easy to want to do those things. And,
yeah.
I've said to many people who, people have questions, right? When you make a big change, leaving a 15-year career and moving into the same space, but at a different location,
Yeah.
There's always those questions that people want to know, like, how is it? And how are you feeling about your decision to do that? And I'm always saying, like, I haven't questioned it, not one single second since it happened. Of course, I love the family that I grew up with at SECA, and, I'll carry them in the deepest parts of my heart forever. But just when when it's
Yeah.
time for that change and you're being drawn into something. Anyway, the long and the short of that is it's easy to show up every day and want to support each other so that we can keep doing all the things because, I think as Wendy's mentioned before in this show, we're a small team of 9,
Mhm.
but we really are pushing a lot of volume out of our little bodies, out of our little group of people. And in order to keep doing that and be effective and engage people, bring awareness, we have to show up for each other.
That's right. Yeah, and the balance that you've struck for us is really nice because a lot of us are, mothers, and some of us have little kids, and some of us have teenagers, and to be able to just pop out to the doctor or whatever and not feel pressured or guilty, and then to be able to know that when we step back in and do the work, it will get done and it will get done well. So yeah, we appreciate you.
It's a good thing. It's a good feeling.
So let's talk. You mentioned to be a part of Changemakers, this team. Tell us a little bit about what we do specifically in the context of who we serve. Because I think that's a big thing that sometimes people don't quite understand. Like, who is it that United Way helps? Um, and so we throw out the term Alice a lot.
Yes.
And I think this is a good opportunity to really get into what Alice means. And it's not a person,
No.
right? Tell us a little bit about Alice.
But it's a way to connect individually, right, with the term by coining it Alice. Alice stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained but Employed, and that Alice is at the heart of everything we do here at the United Way. From the simple things to the complex things and everything in between, we show up at in all of those spaces with Alice on the forefront. And how can we continue to cultivate relationships and form partnerships and develop our work and how we align our strategies? It's all centered around Alice.
Okay, and when we say asset limited, income constrained, but employed or unemployed, what does that mean? I feel like when I start that, sometimes people are just like,
Right.
what? They hear asset and then they like glaze. So what? Let's break that down. What does that mean if we said it in a non-acronym way?
So in a non-acronym way, that is the gap between earning too much to qualify for some assistance programs that are available through the state or other local agencies that can help you.
So like the federal poverty.
The federal
level.
poverty. Yep, exactly. And what Alice families are making. They're making too much to qualify for those things, but not enough to survive day to day. I think the best way, at least that it resonates with me, is putting it in the text of one car repair, one unexpected medical event, emergency, you name it, whatever that might be. Our Alice families who we talk about are on that could send them into a complete disaster, a spiral. One $400 expense is actually what was revealed in the most recent data through the Alice website, that a $400 unexpected expense could put those families into financial ruin. And so that's why, it's ever so important that the work that we're doing and how we're positioning ourselves and our partnerships lead with that in the front of their mind. How can we show up to best support them?
So there can't be that many of us in Southeastern Idaho who are in this category, right?
There's nearly half.
Yeah.
The recent data revealed that about 43% or 2 in 5 people who live in Idaho are Alice. They're making that level, which for a family of four, just to give you an idea, is about $65,000 a year, is what's considered survival. But again, a family of four who's making $65,000 a year is likely not qualifying for many of these other safety net programs offered at the federal and state levels.
So these are individuals and families who are employed, they are working jobs, they are making money, but with especially for families when you have daycare and everything else, cost of food, inflation, that is just it's not enough, and so it sounds like maybe they're living paycheck to paycheck in some cases or working multiple jobs, to try to keep everything afloat, and like you said, maybe they're, one financial issue away from having to utilize, homeless shelter aid for
Yep.
friends or something of that nature, one hospitalization, one major event in their life that could lead to financial disaster.
That's that's exactly it. It takes one little thing, and it's when we say 2 and 5, I
Mhm.
really think that that brings things into focus.
Yeah,
We talk about this a lot in our office too, and how we can really help people connect with Alice and the work that we're doing, connect to the amazing and important work that our nonprofit partner community is doing to, stabilize these families day in and day out. If How often are you in a room of 5 people? It's a lot. And if you look around and really visualize that there's a 43% chance that two of the people in that room are struggling to make ends meet that day that you're in the same space with them.
yeah. So you mentioned some recent data. What else have we learned about Idaho in terms of, Alice and I remember reading that seniors
Seniors.
are struggling now more than ever. Um, and what does that look like for one or two member household for a senior at this point in time?
Well, the data shows us that that population specifically saw nearly a 30% increase in the cost to survive since the last data was released, 2018, 2019, pre-COVID. So again, this is the first look at how Alice families fared from the pandemic. This is the first subset of data that we have that, like you just mentioned, we know that cost of goods and services have skyrocketed. The cost of housing has skyrocketed, which compounds on issues that already existed, prior to those things. So 30% are, and when we talk about our senior households, we're talking about, our grandmas, our grandpas who are on fixed incomes.
Mhm.
Chances are they don't have the ability physically, limitations, whatever that may be, to go out and get a second job to supplement that income to be able to bridge that gap between, what it really takes to survive with the cost of housing and goods and,
Yeah,
all the other expenses that you put into that pool. 30%, that's huge.
that is a significant increase in your monthly budget when you don't, like you said,
Yeah.
have additional income. Yeah, it's our grandparents, our neighbors, our friends, and I think the programs that serve seniors maybe become especially important right now. What are some of our partners that serve seniors?
We have Sika Meals on Wheels, who I think the last data that we received from them, they're delivering 50,000 plus meals a year to nearly 400 individuals. And that's just here in Bannock County. That's their
Yeah,
footprint. And then, our other partners through the Senior Activity Center who are bringing seniors into those centers for what is considered congregate meals versus a home delivered meal. The Senior Center in Bingham County, who is doing both delivering meals to those resident areas and bringing seniors into the center for congregate meals.
yeah,
And in many cases, there's so many statistics linked to, not only the savings for the seniors and their families, but also for our economy when we can help our senior population remain independently housed, when we can
mhm,
help them avoid long-term care facilities or those things that, can be six plus $1,000 a month. That's a big expense for a family or a person
mhm,
who's on a, single limited income, to be able to pay for those things.
yeah. Tell us a little bit more. What else came out of this recent data? I know that single um, female led households significantly were noted. Tell us about that.
The data tells us that 80% of our Alice families, so 80% of our nearly half of our population, are single female led households, disproportionately to, the other household compositions that are evaluated in this report, which is a huge disparity between those. The data doesn't get too into the weeds as far as what might be some of the causes of that, but what we do know is that there's still some disparities between incomes. Also that single female led household, the mom who's working, in most cases, like you've said, two jobs, one and a half jobs, whatever that may be, but has, the daycare expenses. And again, when we remember who is Alice, Alice is making too much to qualify for state assistance programs. And so a $1,200 daycare bill for, a single person with maybe, two children who's making 50 or less $1,000 a year,
Yeah.
becomes a huge strain on that household composition. And I mean, if I had to guess, right, this isn't backed up by the data, but that household composition is probably less than $400 away from a $400 emergency. That's probably more like half.
Yeah. Because when you're living in that financial space, there's no wiggle room, right? So it's not like you can have extra to put into savings in case your car breaks
No,
down. So if I'm understanding this correctly, 80% um, of our female single-led households um, are struggling financially. They're not
it's exactly what. Yeah,
able to make ends meet. And it is I think we all know a single parent, a single mother
or
who
have been
or
one. Yeah.
grandmother or have been one,
Mm.
and and the idea that you do everything all the time, right? And then on top of it, you are doing the right thing. You're working, you're providing for your children, but you're in this space of difficulty.
Difficult. Yeah.
So, how does United Way play into these senior households, into these single mom families that are struggling? How does United Way play into that? How do we help Alice populations?
The primary focus in how we can help those families comes from our community investment process. The community fund, community grants, it's often referred to a lot of things just based on how you're connected to it. But that's where, our magical Wendy and the rest of our team, launch into campaign season and help people, help our community understand what is the landscape of the community that we live in and how can you be a part of the solution. And then those dollars are invested into our local nonprofit communities. This last year, 26 nonprofit programs right here in the Southeastern Idaho corridor were awarded over $400,000 to be able to sustain, increase the impact that our nonprofit partners who are doing the work on the ground every single day, seeing those families every single day, can have some flexibility. And I think that that's the key. When I think back to my time of, at SECA and working in that service delivery model, the flexibility of the funds that, given through United Way, ultimately through our community, is what makes them the most impactful because there's a lot of constraints that come with,
Mhm.
private, local, state, federal grants. There's just parameter, there's a box you have to stay in. And United Way is really able to step in to fill those gaps, literally the actual gaps of what those other programs aren't providing. For instance, we have talked a lot about a $400 unexpected medical expense. Well, in my 17 almost years of being in this space, there's not a whole lot of dedicated grant dollars that can pay for those expenses. That's where United Way comes in without those funds to be able to bridge that gap
Mhm.
so that it doesn't send them in down a bad way that who knows how long it takes to come back from that. Once you lose your housing, once you lose your job, all those kinds of things,
Mhm.
you don't just come back from that overnight. So being able to be this the stopgap and fill that difference between what those
Yeah.
grants can and can't pay for, and being able to use it, at the local agency level discretion, who is working with these families, knows and understands their situation, is probably the most powerful piece of it, in my opinion.
So we at United Way, we through the grants that you mentioned that we fundraise for, we support our nonprofit partners who are serving Alice families.
Yes.
So this is a sort of a safety net, right? That we provide for the families in need, the individuals and families in need, and as you mentioned, those dollars that are given via grants to our partners, that provides and ensures the ability to keep their boots on the ground and helping people who are in that in between state, and protecting them from ending up on the streets, homelessness, and other major issues, right? So, how can members of our community who are maybe not part of the nonprofit sector, how can they get involved? How can they learn more about Alice and the work that United Way does?
Oh gosh. I think we've done a really good job at creating so many ways that people can get involved with this work and share in that impact and the success, and, like we say, be a part of the solution, whether that's through volunteerism. The nonprofit sector literally runs on volunteers because there's just never enough dollars to support the need. That's just the reality of things. So that I think that's one of the most easy ways to get involved with the work that's happening through the volunteer opportunities that United Way is helping to connect to. I think, Wendy will let her talk more about that. That's her wheelhouse with the volunteer efforts. If you, through your workplace, if your employer is running a workplace campaign, we highly encourage you to find out more information about that. Your $1 that you could give, every single paycheck really then goes back out into our community at nearly $4 by the time we're able to, put that with everybody else's dollars coming in, and that goes out in a much more meaningful way. Again, in my opinion,
Mhm.
um, through events that we host or that we're collaborating with. There's so many, I can't think of all of the ways right now, but there are so many ways that our community members can get involved with, not just the work that we're doing, but the work that our nonprofit partners are doing.
Definitely. And then, if someone is interested, if you're a data person, where can they find this latest report on Idaho and
Oh,
Alice?
yes. That would be at unitedforalice.org/Idaho.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And what would you like to, if you could say something about Alice families to our community to help people better understand who they are and what they're experiencing, what would you say? Um, what would you say to our community to help them understand?
This morning, as I was just thinking about Alice and what we're learning in the data, I was taken back to an actual story that I was connected to, and I think I'm going to share that. I think that that's the best way to help understand what situations look like,
Yeah,
and how it can be to really get back on that path to, self sufficiency, sustainability. Um, Gosh, about it's been 8 or more years ago. I received a phone call from a family friend who said, I just stopped in to the vacant parking lot there, kind of over by where Winco is now. And there's a young lady living in her car there. And I know that you work at SECA, and you're the first person that I thought I should call to see, what we can do to help her situation. And so that next day, I drove my car down to the parking lot to go visit with her. And for privacy's sake, I'm just going to refer to her as Nancy. Nancy, a single female, no children, no spouse, who had left an unhealthy relationship situation and literally moved into homelessness. Literally moved into her car. Um, that was the only place she could set up shop, and she was. The long and the short is, I was able to connect with her. learn more about her story, to find out that, she was moving her car every few days, right? Just because she didn't want to draw attention to that. Because she didn't know what she was going to do. So she didn't want to have to speak to her situation because she was terrified of what that might mean. Um, but in the same sense, terrified to leave her car. So she's just literally confounded to her car because she's terrified to leave it, because if somebody comes and she's not there and they take literally her home where she's getting shelter every single day. Um, we were able to connect her to the resources. Again, that was with my time at SECA, and when I was working more hands-on with the service delivery section of the organization. We were able to connect her with the resources both through SECA and through the community, ultimately able to get her housed. She is a disabled individual who was living on a fixed income, living on a disability income. Um, had some mental health struggles going on that were being untreated just because she was literally just trying to survive from hour to hour, day to day, night to night, you name it. Um, at the end of it, we were able to kind of assess her situation. She was able to get linked up with one of SECA's housing properties actually here in town, that's kind of targeted more to single or two people household affordable studio apartment. Um, but, that came with first month's rent and deposit. And living on a fixed income, I would say that most of us couldn't come up with hundreds or thousands of dollars at one instance to do that, because of grants like United Way and the flexible dollars there. She was able to get the rental assistance, get into the place, and the other piece to that is her car insurance had lapsed. So aside from being fearful that her home may be taken away if she left it to go push out into the community to find out how, to get her situation changed, she was terrified to drive it because she didn't have insurance. So again, with flexible dollars through the United Way efforts, we were able to get insurance back on her vehicle. She had to maintain that vehicle you know, to get around to things, to get access to things. I lost touch with her a few years ago, but I stayed in touch with her for a long time, and she really moved. She met friends. She created a little, community there at the complex that she was living in, and ultimately, what I would say, she moved from literal homelessness, living in her car, to a thriving, surviving, stable situation. And at the time, Sika was running a family development program that we were able to connect her to, which was, more regular check-ins and goal setting, and, how are we going to get there? Of course, once those immediate needs were addressed, then she was able to address those things, address her mental health concerns, get her, her health, which obviously wasn't great, both mental and physical at that point when you're living in your car and, surviving on just whatever happens to be available for you. Um, and so it was actually, I really enjoyed being able to go back and reflect on that story as I was, thinking about Alice and we're looking at the data. Um, that was a pivotal moment in my career, being boots on the ground. You see the hard situations every day, and sometimes it can wear on you. And I find peace and remind myself why we're showing up every day, why we're doing this work, who it's impacting, and how it is literally changing people's lives because we show up in this space every single day when I get to reflect on that story.
That is a really powerful story, and to provide stabilization for someone, whose issues, are out of their control, in some cases, domestic violence. What would you say to someone? Because, when I have conversations, with people about United Way and the people we serve, sometimes there's a misconception. I think it's just lack of knowledge of what our community, situation is. Um, and as I'm reading through our data, and our specific nonprofit partners' stories, it seems, like this is not often it's like, I've never asked for anything
Mhm.
and I've never needed help before, but now I do. Now I'm in a situation where I do. And I've heard some version of that in a lot of different stories about, our nonprofit partners helping through the grants at United Way. What would you say to someone who maybe says, "Oh, they just need to work harder," or "That's a handout. Um, we shouldn't just be giving handouts." What would you say to that person to help them understand that that's not exactly what's happening?
Yeah. um, you know, I go back to something that somebody once said to me, and it's really stayed with me for a long time. That because there has been comments made like that of, oh well, I just saw so and so use an EBT food stamp card at the grocery store, but then they got into this, what I think is a really nice car, or maybe it's nicer than my car. And somebody once said to me that they literally had said this to a person who said that of, how do you know that that's not also their home? Which again takes me back to the story
Yeah.
of Nancy. How do you know that that's not the only thing that they have to their name that's getting them to the places? So I always try and incorporate that, I think in
Mhm.
a softer way, because again, I think it's just there's just not a level of understanding if you've never experienced or been involved in a situation like that. And now that we have the Alice data, and really since moving into this United space and getting to connect with Alice on a whole new level, leaning into the Alice data, what the data tells us, because I think whether you're a data person or not, we can all connect with data that 2 out of 5 people in our area are struggling to make ends meet every day. And just because they may not look at face value that they're struggling to make ends meet every day doesn't mean that, they're clenching their jaws and their body is tense because they know one unexpected thing could put them in the car.
Yeah.
Possibly that's the only thing that they own to their name. That is literally their only asset. And, I've seen firsthand that can be a reality for somebody, that that's what you have to your name. And ultimately it became your house.
Yeah. I think it's very I think telling of our community that we have such a strong nonprofit sector to provide this this stopgap, this um, ability to catch someone before things get worse and help them become stabilized. Because at the end of the day, we all want a thriving community,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Sh-
Well, and that's, I mean, I think the thing that, sorry to interrupt you,
nope.
but I think that the thing that has been probably the most eye-opening, or that I've connected with, in really dissecting this information that we're learning, and how can we turn it into, stories and connect it to real life circumstances that people right here in our communities are facing, um, is that when we create a community where Alice thrives, it doesn't just change the life of Alice, it changes all of our lives. It creates a community, a culture, an environment, whatever you want to call it, that is best for all of us. When Alice is thriving, we're all thriving.
Yes. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to comment in or cover related to Alice before we sign out?
Not that I can think of with Alice. I just encourage you, whether you're a data person or not, get familiar with this data, because chances are it's going to resonate with you in some capacity or another. Again, that was unitedforalice.org/Idaho. Ginny will make sure it gets in the show notes. There's so much meaningful information in there. And when you really look at, numbers, maybe not just like data, but the numbers of the variance between federal poverty levels and survival budgets, and then one more step of survival budgets and stability budgets, which, we'll have to touch on that probably in another episode, because that will take up some time of,
Mhm.
what does our data show us with what we know today, about what it costs to live and be able to save money and be prepared, have emergency funds, those kinds of things. And if you have questions about it, if we can help understand it in any way, we don't profess to be the data experts. We don't pull this data together. We partner with a big project that happens through the Pacific Northwest to put this data together. But please get a hold of us. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
We're happy to talk about it. We want everybody to understand, the importance of this work, what our nonprofit partners are doing every single day to, make a difference in people's lives, and how the United Way is showing up in that space to support that work.
Yes. And the report is very accessible. It's,
Yes.
it's anyone could read it and understand it. It's broken down in a really good way, and then opportunity to dig deeper if you want to dig
Yeah.
deeper, because this information includes Southeastern Idaho. It's right here in our community. We can learn more about our community and the people who live here.
We can.
Okay, Shantay, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jenny. It's fun to be here. I'm excited that we have a podcast. I'm
I know.
excited to, I'm just excited for the space that it gives us to share about the work, to highlight the stories, to share the impact, right? Like,
Yes,
we want everybody to be connected to this work and feel what we feel for this work.
absolutely.
That's the end game. That's the end goal.
Perfect. Perfect closer.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will see you all next time on Igniting Change, United Way Unfiltered. Thanks so much for joining us.